For millennia, humanity has been engaged in a remarkable experiment civilization. These are not merely collections of grand cities or sprawling empires, but intricate living networks woven from threads of culture, governance, economy, and technology. They are complex ecosystems, as delicate and interconnected as any found in the natural world. From the towering pyramids of Giza to the intricate aqueducts of Rome, these societies represent the zenith of human ingenuity and cooperation, testaments to our ability to shape the world around us and build something far greater than any single individual. But just as ecosystems can face collapse, so too can civilizations. This process is rarely a sudden, cataclysmic event, like a tree felled in a storm. More often, it is a slow, creeping decline, a gradual unwinding driven by a confluence of pressures. Environmental strain, social fragmentation, political decay, and economic instability can act like a slow-acting poison, weakening the very foundations upon which these great structures are built. The fall is not a single moment, but a long, drawn-out process of transformation and ultimately dissolution. It is a sobering thought, but one we must confront. By turning our gaze to the silent ruins and forgotten cities of the past, we are not simply indulging in historical curiosity, we are seeking wisdom. Understanding why these once mighty societies faltered and fell offers us a unique and invaluable mirror. It allows us to see the reflections of our own time, to identify the pressures we face today, and to learn the crucial lessons that might help us navigate the complex challenges ahead and avoid repeating the same tragic pitfalls. Deep within the verdant embrace of the Central American rainforest lie the silent remnants of a truly extraordinary civilization, the Maya. For over 2.5 millennia, they flourished here, creating a society of remarkable complexity and intellectual brilliance. Their cities, with names that still echo with power, Tikal, Calakmul, Palenque, were architectural marvels, dominated by towering stone pyramids that reached for the heavens, their sides adorned with intricate carvings that tell stories of gods and kings. They were a people of the mind as well as of stone. They developed one of the most sophisticated writing systems in the ancient Americas, a complex hieroglyphic script that recorded their history, their rituals, and their dynastic lineages. Their understanding of the cosmos was astonishing. With nothing more than naked-eye observation, their astronomers tracked the movements of the sun, the moon, and the planets with breathtaking accuracy. This knowledge was encoded in their calendars, intricate systems of interlocking cycles that were more precise than those used in Europe at the time. Their society was a mosaic of powerful city-states, each ruled by a divine king, a Kuhul Ajau. These kingdoms were often locked in a complex dance of diplomacy, trade, and warfare. Alliances would form and then shatter, and rivalries could simmer for generations, erupting into conflicts that saw cities conquered and their rulers sacrificed. This political landscape was as dynamic and sometimes as volatile as the tropical environment they inhabited. A constant interplay of power and ambition played out beneath the jungle canopy. Yet, around the 9th century AD, a profound change began to sweep through the southern Maya lowlands. The great cities, once teeming with life, began to empty. The frantic pace of construction ceased, the carving of stone monuments halted, and one by one, the royal courts fell silent. The jungle, ever present and patient, began its slow work of reclamation, its green tendrils wrapping around the stone temples and palaces, pulling them back into the earth. It was not a single, sudden event, but a protracted decline, a fading of a great light. What caused this collapse? The evidence points not to a single culprit, but to a fatal synergy of factors. Decades of intensive agriculture necessary to feed the burgeoning populations of the cities had led to widespread deforestation and soil erosion. The very land that had sustained them was becoming exhausted. This environmental degradation was then compounded by a series of prolonged and severe droughts, a climatic shift that turned their once fertile heartland into a parched and unforgiving landscape. The strain on resources exacerbated the already fierce political rivalries. As food and water became scarce, the delicate balance of power between the city-states shattered. Warfare became more frequent and more destructive, not for tribute or captives, but for sheer survival. The authority of the divine kings, whose rituals were meant to ensure the favor of the gods and the coming of the rains, began to crumble as the rains failed and the harvests withered. The social contract was broken. The lesson of the Maya is a stark and powerful one. It speaks to the profound danger of environmental overreach, of pushing an ecosystem beyond its capacity to recover. And it demonstrates with chilling clarity how political disunity can cripple a society's ability to respond to a crisis. When faced with an existential threat, their inability to cooperate, to formulate a collective response, sealed their fate. Their great cities were abandoned, not to a foreign invader, but to drought, famine, and their own internal conflicts. There has perhaps been no empire in history that has cast a longer shadow than Rome. From a modest city-state on the banks of the Tiber, it grew to become a colossal power, its legions marching from the misty highlands of Britannia to the sun-scorched deserts of Mesopotamia. The Roman eagle, the aquila, was a symbol of order, law, and unparalleled military might, recognized and feared across the known world. At its zenith, the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, held sway over a quarter of the world's population. The achievements of the Romans were monumental, etched into the very landscape of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Their engineering prowess was legendary. They built vast networks of stone-paved roads that bound their sprawling empire together, and magnificent aqueducts that carried fresh water to their cities over staggering distances. Their architecture, with its grand arches, domes, and columns, still inspires awe today in structures like the Colosseum and the Pantheon. Their system of law became the bedrock of many modern legal codes. This vast and complex entity was not just a military machine, it was an economic powerhouse. Goods, people, and ideas flowed freely along its trade routes, creating a level of interconnectedness and prosperity previously unseen. From the grain of Egypt to the silks of the East, the empire was a vibrant, melting pot of cultures and commerce. For centuries, to be a Roman citizen was to be a part of the greatest political and social enterprise on earth, a source of immense pride and security. But empires, like all living things, have a lifespan. And for Rome, the seeds of its decline were sown long before its final fall. The sheer size of the empire became a liability, defending thousands of miles of frontier against constant incursions from so-called barbarian tribes became an immense and unsustainable drain on the treasury and on manpower. The military, once the guarantor of stability, became a source of chaos, with ambitious generals frequently turning their legions on Rome itself to seize the imperial throne. Internally, the rot was just as deep. The political system descended into chronic instability. A period known as the crisis of the 3rd century saw a dizzying succession of emperors, most of whom met violent ends. The economy was crippled by rampant inflation, debased currency, and crushing taxes levied to pay for the ever-expanding army. The gap between the fabulously wealthy elite and the impoverished masses grew into a chasm, fueling social unrest and eroding the sense of shared civic identity that had once been Rome's strength. External pressures mounted relentlessly. Waves of migrations, driven by climate change and conflict in Central Asia, pushed tribes like the Goths and Vandals against the Roman frontiers. At times they were incorporated as allies, at other times they were invaders. The sack of Rome by the Visigoths in 410 AD was a profound psychological blow, a sign that the Eternal City was no longer inviolable. Though the empire would persist in some form for decades more, its core was hollowed out. The final collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century was not a single event, but the culmination of these long-term, intertwined crises. It teaches us a profound lesson. about the fragility of power. Even the mightiest of empires, with unparalleled military, economic, and cultural dominance, can be brought down from within. Internal decay, political corruption, and economic inequality can render a society so brittle that it shatters under the weight of external pressures it might once have easily withstood. Along the fertile floodplains of the Indus River and its tributaries, in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, one of the world's earliest and most enigmatic urban civilizations quietly emerged. Flourishing at the same time as ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, was in many ways their equal, yet it remains shrouded in a profound and tantalizing mystery. We do not know what they called themselves or what language they spoke. Their achievements, however, speak for themselves. They built some of the world's first meticulously planned cities, such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. These were not chaotic sprawls, but masterpieces of urban design, laid out on precise grid systems. They featured sophisticated water management systems, with houses containing private wells, bathing platforms, and even latrines connected to a complex network of covered drains running beneath the streets. This level of civic planning and concern for sanitation was unparalleled in the ancient world. The uniformity of their culture across a vast geographical area is striking. From city to city, we find the same standardized weights and measures, the same styles of pottery, and the same distinctive bricks, baked to a consistent size ratio. This suggests a highly organized and integrated society, likely bound by a robust system of internal trade and shared administration. Yet, for all this organization, there is a conspicuous absence of the usual markers of ancient power. No grand palaces, no monumental royal tombs, no depictions of kings or warfare. Their society appears to have been remarkably egalitarian and peaceful, at least compared to its contemporaries. Their prosperity was built not on conquest, but on agriculture and trade. They cultivated wheat, barley, and cotton, and their merchants established extensive trade networks that reached as far as Mesopotamia. Intricate seals, carved with beautiful representations of animals, and an elegant undeciphered script, were likely used to mark goods and signify ownership, testaments to a thriving and complex economy. Then, around 1900 BC, after centuries of stability and prosperity, a decline set in. The great cities began to shrink, their populations dispersing into smaller, more rural settlements. The hallmarks of their unified culture, the standardized weights, the distinctive seals, the elegant script, began to fade and disappear. The intricate urban infrastructure fell into disrepair. The great experiment in peaceful, organized urban living was coming to an end, not with a bang, but with a slow, quiet unraveling. The reasons for this decline are still debated, but evidence increasingly points towards the environment as the primary driver. The Indus Valley people were utterly dependent on the river's predictable, life-giving floods for their agriculture. Scientific studies of ancient sediments suggest that the climate began to change. The monsoon patterns which feed the river system may have shifted, becoming weaker and less reliable. At the same time, tectonic activity may have altered the course of the Indus and its crucial tributaries, leaving some cities literally high and dry. This environmental instability would have had a devastating impact. A decline in agricultural output would have undermined the economic foundation of the cities, making it impossible to support large concentrated populations. The disruption of river routes would have crippled their trade networks, severing the connections that held their vast society together. The lesson from the silent mounds of Mohenjo-daro is a sobering one. A society's intricate systems of trade and governance are only as resilient as the environment that sustains them. Their fate reminds us that even the most well-ordered civilization is profoundly vulnerable when the natural systems upon which it depends begin to fail. As we journey through the ruins of these disparate and distant worlds, the Maya, the Romans, the people of the Indus, a fascinating and somewhat unsettling picture begins to emerge. Despite the vast differences in their geography, culture, and technology, the stories of their decline echo one another. It seems that civilizations, much like complex biological organisms, are susceptible to similar kinds of systemic failures. There are common threads that run through these tales of collapse, patterns of stress and decay that repeat across history. One of the most powerful and recurring themes is environmental degradation. Time and again, we see societies inadvertently soaring off the very branch they are sitting on. The Maya deforested their landscape to fuel their cities and agriculture, only to exacerbate devastating droughts. The Romans, too, engaged in widespread deforestation for fuel, construction, and to clear land for farms, leading to soil erosion that silted up harbors and reduced agricultural yields. The relationship between a civilization and its environment is a delicate pact, and breaking it has consistently proven to be a path to ruin. Political fragmentation and internal conflict form another common thread. The Roman Empire was torn apart by civil wars and a succession of weak or self-serving leaders. The Mayan city-states, rather than uniting against the shared threat of climate change, turned on each other in a desperate struggle for dwindling resources. When the elite of a society prioritize their own power and wealth over the collective good, and when political systems lose their legitimacy and ability to solve problems, the entire social fabric begins to unravel from within. Economic inequality is a powerful solvent of social cohesion. In the late Roman Empire, the immense gulf between the super-rich senatorial class and the impoverished masses created a society with little shared interest or common purpose. When a large portion of the population feels that the system no longer serves them, their loyalty to that system evaporates. This can lead to unrest, a decline in productivity, and a society that is brittle and vulnerable to shocks that a more equitable and cohesive society might have weathered. We must also consider the role of external pressures. For Rome, this took the form of relentless migrations and invasions along its vast frontiers. While these external forces are often seen as the primary cause of collapse, the truth is more complex. A healthy, robust, and unified society can often repel or absorb such pressures. It is when a civilization is already weakened by internal problems, by environmental stress, political decay, and social inequality, that external shocks can become the final decisive blow. Furthermore, there is the intangible but crucial factor of cultural shifts and the loss of collective identity. This is the erosion of the shared set of values, beliefs, and goals that bind a people together. For the Romans, it was the slow decline of the traditional civic virtues of duty and public service. For the Maya, it may have been a loss of faith in the divine authority of their kings. When a society loses its story, its reason for being, it loses the will to overcome challenges and the cohesiveness needed for collective action. These patterns are not independent of one another. They are deeply interconnected, creating feedback loops that can accelerate a society's decline. Environmental stress leads to economic hardship, which fuels social unrest, which in turn weakens political institutions, making it impossible to address the initial environmental problem. It is this complex interplay, this cascade of failures across multiple fronts, that characterizes the process of civilizational collapse. It is, in essence, a systems failure, where the whole intricate machine just grinds to a halt. It is tempting to view these stories of ancient collapse as relics of a distant, less sophisticated past. We live in an age of unprecedented technological prowess. We've harnessed the atom, mapped the human genome, and sent probes to the furthest reaches of our solar system. Surely our global, interconnected civilization, with all its scientific knowledge and engineering marvels, is immune to the fates that befell the Maya or the Romans, but this confidence may be misplaced. The lessons from history are not relics, they are urgent warnings. Our technological advancement, for all its benefits, has not severed our fundamental dependence on the planet's ecological systems. In fact, it has amplified our impact to a global scale. The deforestation and soil erosion that troubled the Maya and Romans are now happening worldwide. Our industrial activities are altering the very climate of the planet, creating the potential for droughts, floods, and disruptions to agriculture on a scale those ancient societies could never have imagined. The threat of resource depletion remains as relevant as ever. Our entire global economy is predicated on the consumption of finite resources, particularly fossil fuels. Just as the Romans struggled with the immense cost of maintaining their empire, we face the challenge of powering a civilization of 8 billion people on a planet with limited supplies. The quest for resources continues to be a source of geopolitical tension and conflict, a modern echo of the resource wars that plagued the ancient world. Consider the patterns of political instability and social fragmentation. In many parts of the world, we see a decline in trust in institutions, a rise in polarization, and the spread of misinformation that erodes our shared understanding of reality. The economic inequality that hollowed out Roman society is starkly visible today, with a vast and growing chasm between the ultra-wealthy and the rest of the global population. These are the very same social fractures that weakened ancient civilizations, making them vulnerable to crisis. Our interconnectedness, our greatest strength, is also a profound vulnerability. The Roman Empire's vast network of roads and trade routes facilitated the spread of not just goods, but also devastating plagues like the Antonine Plague, which severely weakened the empire. Today, our global network of air travel and trade means that a new pathogen can spread across the entire world in a matter of weeks. An economic crisis in one major economy can trigger a cascade of failures across the globe. Our system is tightly coupled, making it susceptible to rapid systemic shocks. Technology itself is not a panacea. It can be a double-edged sword. While it offers potential solutions to our problems, it can also create new ones or exacerbate existing ones. The very technologies that connect us can also be used to divide us. The industrial processes that create our wealth also generate the pollution that threatens our environment. Believing that a future technological fix will magically solve our problems is a dangerous form of complacency. The Romans had the best engineering of their day. It did not save them. By looking into the mirror of the past, we see our own reflection staring back. The specific details have changed. We worry about carbon dioxide, not soil erosion in Latium, about global financial markets, not the debasement of the denarius, but the fundamental challenges remain eerily similar. The ancient lessons are not about the past, they are about the present and the future. They are a stark reminder that progress is not inevitable, and that the continued existence of our own complex civilization is not guaranteed. The stories of the fallen are, at their core, stories of complexity. Civilizations are not static monoliths of stone and edict. They are dynamic, adaptive, and incredibly intricate systems. They are living things, born from a confluence of opportunity and ingenuity. They grow, they mature, and as we have seen, they can decline and transform. Understanding this dynamic nature is the first step towards true insight. They exist in a constant dance with their environment, their neighbors, and their own internal social structures. The path to collapse is almost never a straight line. It is a process governed by the principles of complex systems. Small, seemingly insignificant changes can, over time, accumulate and trigger dramatic shifts. A slight change in monsoon patterns, a subtle debasement of the currency, a growing sense of disenfranchisement among the populace, these are the small cracks that can eventually compromise the integrity of the entire structure. There is often a tipping point, a threshold beyond which the system can no longer maintain its current state and begins a rapid transition. This is why single-cause explanations for collapse are so often unsatisfying and incorrect. It was not just the drought that doomed the Maya, nor was it just the barbarians at the gates of Rome. It was the interplay of multiple reinforcing stresses that overwhelmed their capacity to adapt. The environmental pressures exacerbated the social tensions, which in turn crippled the political response. It is a cascade of failure, a domino effect where each falling piece triggers the next in a chain reaction of decline. But collapse is not always an ending. It is also a transformation. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was a catastrophe for the inhabitants of the city of Rome, but it also paved the way for the emergence of the new kingdoms, cultures, and languages of medieval Europe. The Maya did not vanish from the earth. Their descendants still live in Central America today, carrying on traditions that stretch back millennia. The great cities were abandoned, but the people adapted, reorganizing into smaller, more resilient communities. By studying these processes, we move beyond a simple narrative of success and failure. We begin to see the inherent fragility and resilience of complex human societies. We learn that what appears to be stable can be surprisingly brittle, and that what seems like a catastrophic end can also be a form of radical reorganization. This perspective is vital, as it forces us to look at our own civilization not as a permanent fixture, but as one more iteration in this long historical experiment. This understanding provides us with a powerful analytical tool. It allows us to examine our own world and identify the multiple interacting stresses we face today: climate change, resource depletion, economic inequality, political polarization. We can see how these are not separate problems, but interconnected parts of a single global system. And we can appreciate that our resilience depends not on solving one of them, but on addressing all of them in a holistic way. The study of past collapses, therefore, is not a morbid fascination with ruin. It is an exercise in systems thinking. It is the practice of seeing the whole, of understanding the connections, and of appreciating the delicate balance that allows a complex society to thrive. It gives us the wisdom to recognize that our civilization, too, is a complex system, and that its future depends on our ability to manage its intricate dance of interconnected parts, lest we too become another lesson for a future generation. In the grand library of human experience, history is perhaps the most vital section. It is a vast repository of data on what has worked, what has failed, and why. To ignore it, to believe that our times are so unique that the past has nothing to teach us, is an act of profound arrogance. The importance of learning from history, particularly from the history of civilizational decline, cannot be overstated. It is not about memorizing dates and names of kings. It is about understanding the very dynamics of human society. This historical perspective provides a crucial antidote to short-term thinking. Our modern world is often driven by quarterly earnings reports, election cycles, and 24-hour news. We are conditioned to focus on the immediate, the urgent, and the novel. History, however, forces us to zoom out. It allows us to see the long-term consequences of actions and policies, to recognize slow-moving crises that may take generations to fully manifest, like climate change or deep-seated social inequality. It gives us the gift of a longer view. By studying the past, we cultivate empathy and a broader understanding of the human condition. We see that people in ancient Rome or the Mayan heartlands were not so different from us. They loved their families, they strived for better lives, they worried about the future, they were caught in systems and circumstances often beyond their control. This realization helps to break down the barriers of time and culture, fostering a sense of shared humanity and a deeper appreciation for the challenges we all face, past and present. Furthermore, history provides us with a catalogue of possibilities. It shows us that the way our society is structured is not the only way. There have been countless different forms of governance, economy, and social organization throughout time. The apparently egalitarian society of the Indus Valley stands in stark contrast to the hierarchical Roman Empire. This diversity of experience can inspire creativity and innovation, suggesting alternative paths we might take as we try to build a more sustainable and just future. Learning from history is also an act of humility. It reminds us that we are not the pinnacle of creation, but part of a long unfolding story. It shows us that even the most powerful and sophisticated societies can be brought low by arrogance, short-sightedness, and a failure to adapt. This humility is essential. It encourages us to question our own assumptions, to be wary of easy answers, and to approach the immense challenges we face with a healthy respect for their complexity. Ultimately, the value of this knowledge lies in its application. It is not enough to simply know why Rome fell. We must use that knowledge to examine the health of our own institutions, the sustainability of our own practices, and the resilience of our own social fabric. History provides the diagnostic tools. It highlights the symptoms of decay and the warning signs of systemic stress. It is up to us to make the diagnosis and to have the courage to act upon it. The future is not yet written. We stand at a unique moment with an unprecedented understanding of the past and a powerful capacity to shape what is to come. The wisdom of the ages is there for us, whispering its lessons from the silent stones and dusty chronicles. By listening to those whispers, by taking the long view and learning from the triumphs and tragedies of those who came before, we give ourselves the best possible chance to shape a future that is not only sustainable, but also resilient and worthy of the long human journey. The ruins of great civilizations stand as silent, solemn monuments to a profound truth. No society is permanent. They are all part of the great, flowing river of time. By studying their rise and their fall, from the jungle-swallowed temples of the Maya to the fractured forums of Rome, we are doing more than simply looking at the past. We are seeking a map, a guide to help us navigate the treacherous waters of our own time. These ancient stories are not tales of failure, but invaluable case studies in the complex, delicate art of sustaining a civilization. The challenges they faced resonate with a startling familiarity. Environmental limits, social division, political instability. These are not ancient problems, they are human problems. Today we face them on a global scale, armed with technology they could not have dreamed of, yet burdened by the same tendencies towards short-term thinking and factionalism. The echoes of history serve as a powerful reminder that our advanced technology and interconnected economy do not grant us immunity. They simply raise the stakes. The ultimate lesson is one of agency and responsibility. The future is not a predetermined destination. It is a landscape we are actively shaping with every choice we make. By understanding the patterns of the past, we can better identify the fault lines in our own world. We can work to build a society that is more resilient, more equitable, and more in tune with the natural systems that support us. The ghosts of these fallen civilizations do not ask for our pity. They ask for our attention. They ask us to learn from their mistakes so that we might avoid repeating them and write a different, more hopeful chapter for our own.